Hi, so I'm joined today with a very special guest, and I'll point that way, but I bet it'll end up that way on the screen when it goes out. So I'm with the fabulous Mandy Gutzel, and she's the founder and owner of No Limits. And we thought it'd be really good to get together today and have a little chit chat about courage and about courageous conversations. And in case actually you're thinking, well, who are you? Then my name's Louise Creswick. I'm a grief and loss coach as well. So I'm going to ask Mandy to introduce herself for just a couple of minutes.
Oh, only a couple of minutes, thank you. So, yeah, my name's Mandy Gutzel. I have been developing, running No Limits for, to be honest with you, from when it really started about sort of 15, 20 years ago. And it's developed and morphed, to be frank, as time's gone on. So originally, a lot of my work was around a lot of therapy, because my background is in mental health, psychology, therapy, drama therapist as well, and also have a degree in adult mental health. But I also went back at one point to university and actually specialised in child and adolescent psychiatry. So yeah, originally a lot of more therapy based work, which was, fabulous. And I still continue to do some of my therapy based work. And then my training arm really developed from that. So I continue to liaise with different companies and organisations, but I'd say predominantly those who have a background or a link with care, social care, health, mental well-being, and some it may be adults. For others, it may be working with young people and children, and also a large number of the staff practitioners. I tend to do a lot more training currently with a lot of the staff members as well. And then about frightening, about 15 years ago, a friend actually turned around to me one day and said, "Oh, man, I've found this thing called coaching, um, and it'd be right up your street." It was one of those conversations. I was like, "Okay." So she gave me a contact, and in fact, what I did originally was one of the first people that had trained in coactive coaching, which is what I trained in. I spoke to this lady, and she'd not long trained and qualified, and she says, "Oh, the best way of doing it is take on a coach yourself to be coached." So she became my coach. So she coached me, and I really got a personal sense of how that could work, and I was like, "Ooh, okay." And I actually then, it was just a journey from there, really. I went and did my coactive coach training with CTI, who I'm biased, I think are amazing and wonderful, and had some real profound changes and shifts. And in fact, interestingly, it was the coaching training itself that I would say really developed my business big time. That really enabled me to develop the work further. And then I really developed what I call the coaching arm of it. And I actually not only coached with the coactive coach training with adults and then did my certification process, which is about another year. I also did what they call, there's ORSC, which is another organisation, and it stands for Organisational and Relationship Systems Coaching. So I did my training with those, and particularly looked at systems, both within families, within teams, companies. And then also for about another year, because by the way, I'm a lifelong learner. So about another year, then continued other training with parent and teen coaching as well. And I'm a supervisor as well. So a large number of people who come to see me actually, coaches, therapists, practitioners in a range of fields, they come because they want to be really great at what they do, and they already are. But to be looking after themselves, which is really important to sustain that, they need to be able to really share their work with somebody who can enable them to really observe it from a distance, be more objective about the work, and perhaps look at where they might have some blind spots, where they can really develop their practice further. And I really, really love and enjoy a lot of what I do, to be honest, but I really enjoy the supervision side of it. And just to finish my couple of minutes, I know, you'd have to shut me up. We've obviously met, I say, oh, it's not obvious, is it, to some people, but I've been facilitating the co-coaching forum for the Association for Coaching for as long as I can remember. Certainly got a bit 12, 15 years, I think. And that is a real fantastic opportunity for us to co-coach and develop coaching skills. And I know, Louise, we've met through that process. And also recently, the last, say, 6 months, I've been creating with two other coaches another arm, for want of a better term, I suppose, and another piece to the work, which is called Courageous Coaching Conversations Around the Coffee Table. And that's really just taking coaching a step further and really looking at, what does it even mean? Do you know what I mean? Why do we need this courage? What is it? What does it look like? And on that note, I know that yourself, Louise, and myself, and a gentleman called Neil Wood, we are actually going to be facilitating workshops at an event coming up. 11th of June is what we've set it as at the moment through the Association for Coaching. And that title is about creating, courageous conversations, and particularly for that particular event is for developing and enabling coaches in particular to explore what that means. And that's sort of why we're here, isn't it? That's very much what's led us to this point. So
all the C's, creating courageous coaching conversation.
Absolutely. I love it. All the C's. We like that. Do you see what I see? But that's not a C.
And yeah, I mean, I'm like super excited to be part of this event, and obviously really appreciate you bringing me in on that, Mandy, because it's something that I've been passionate about for a long time. The fact that people out there that know me will know that grief and loss is a fairly unique kind of niche, if you want to call it that, within the coaching industry. It's we're still quite rare, and so it's having I think people often sort of ask me, how do you have those kind of conversations within a coaching context with clients? That's what's really kind of sparked my sort of passion and interest in this. But I mean, courage is an interesting word, isn't it, in itself, and it sort of sparks all kinds of things for people. So how do you define courage, or what does it mean to you?
Interesting. I've been having, I say interesting just because of late I've been having lots of discussions with both the other two women that I'm doing the courageous coaching conversations around the coffee table with, but also my partner, because we had a conversation not so long ago, and actually I realised quite quickly that his definition of what he believed to be courage and mine was somewhat different. So for me, courage is many things, but it's about taking that step when I think a lot of things within you are almost going, oh, can I really do this? Can I really say this? And still pushing through that internal, that sense is the way I describe it, and still being able to push through that and coming through the other side of that process, and actually feeling bigger, better, feeling like more integral, more in line with who the person is and who they're becoming. That for me is courage. And I think it's, there's I'm sure there's a book classic book by Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And actually I do believe that, I think courage is about, there may be an element of fear. Fear might be a big word, but there could be an element of fear. I think that can also include a level of anxiety, a level of, being unsure. I don't quite know. I don't know if I take this step, whatever that is. There's a bit of an unknown. What may be the potential consequences? So I think also, for me in particular, it's really interesting. Again, other people have very different definitions. There is something for me about involving conversations. I know for other people it may look like going into burning buildings or jumping off, a bridge with bungee jumps and so forth. But for me personally, I'm particularly interested in the conversations that people need, and I say need, need to really have with others around them, to really connect with other people and feel they can speak their truth. They can speak their truth and that be okay, even if other people don't agree with their truth or don't quite understand it, or may have their own opinions. But it's being okay to be able to feel somebody can do that and be true. I'm doing this, or I don't, I'm doing this, touching my heart with my hands. It's like being true to who you really are.
Yeah.
And I think creating some transparency and clarity. I do think a lot of the times that when if you're wanting to have some level of conversation which feels a little bit, I do this, a bit uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable, being able to find the place, dig within, to be able to voice that, knowing that, I think whatever the outcome, knowing that, again, it's in service of, that's the way, again, I'm just thinking out loud, really. I process out loud a lot. It's thinking, being in service of the relationship. That's what strikes me, so that you can enable the relationship to be as truthful and as transparent and as open as possible, so it has room to develop, to grow, to be open.
Yeah. I'm glad you sort of alluded to the feeling side of it, because I struggle to put it into words, to be honest, in terms of what it is for me, but it's definitely something that's felt like a feeling.
Yeah.
And it's definitely in this area as well for me. And I remember back in one of our co-coaching meetings, you gave us a sheet with all these different definitions of courage, and there were so many, so many varied, and going right back to like ancient times, like this sense of bravery and all the rest of it. And I suppose that's where people get that perception about it being like fearless, but actually for me, like you said, it's more about recognizing that fear and embracing that to an extent.
And knowing that it's in service of something that can be better, or that, in service of something that's becoming better, where, whatever that is, be the person, the relationship, the circumstance. And I think it's very subjective. I know I did a couple of video calls and other stuff on the other courageous conversations I was on about, and it's I think I'm saying it's like, I think if you were to speak to, for example, a police person or a firefighter, the classic, if you like, people where someone goes, oh, no, that's an act of bravery. If you speak to those individuals who do that work, I think they would say, actually, I don't really see that as being courageous. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily see that as brave. I just do what I do. But for somebody else who doesn't do that, on the outside looking in, their definition may be, oh wow, that takes courage. Somebody mentioned it to me about, I was being interviewed a little while ago about various things, and it connected with my background, which was especially when I did my original mental health nursing, and there was something mentioned about that being like, oh, you know, you needing courage, particularly when I used to work in a hospital in an acute environment, you know, with adults who would be classed as having quite severe mental health issues. And and even looking back then, a number of people would look at me and go, oh wow, that's a brave thing to do. How can you do that sort of work? Oh, we couldn't do that. And I didn't. I remember saying to somebody, it's like I just always saw, and I suppose I still do. I have this ability to see people for being people. You know, I see beyond the label or the diagnosis, or I try and I see all the other stuff that they're made up of, you know, other than just that one piece that seems to sometimes define people. You know, I think there are many things that define us, and I certainly don't think somebody's label or diagnosis actually defines them. I think it can do, whether they allow it to or other people may see it that way. But I don't think that's always my experience. I don't think that's very healthy for the individual either. So, yeah.
It's a little bit like people say to me about, oh, you're so brave going on social media and putting yourself out there and doing all these Facebook lives, and yet I'm like, am I? I don't necessarily think of it as an act of bravery or like something that I need to have. I guess in the early days, when I think about that first time I pressed the go live button, there was a little bit of courage there involved, and a bit of faith, really, just to know, you know, it will all be okay.
Yes.
But now I guess, having done that so often, it's just become sort of second nature to me.
Yeah, I don't know whether I can remember it off by heart now. You were just, as you were speaking there, and you said faith. Yeah. I was suddenly, my head somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about there's something in the Bible about courage and faith. And I know, and it's it's bugging me now because it's not quite coming to me, but I'm sort of hoping it will. Just carry on speaking, Louise. I would let everyone. So I'm just trying to Google something.
Should I play the elevator music for a minute?
Courage and faith, Bible quote.
No, it is really interesting that perhaps I don't know whether it's sort of innate or not, but it's interesting that I think maybe people view it as something they need to go and get, and sort of versus this thing about, well, actually, do we already have that? It's just a case of how you harness it and tap into it. And I don't know, that's always interesting kind of conversation, I think, as well. It's a bit like confidence, isn't it? People think, I need to get more confidence, I need to get more courage, you know. It's
so I was just I'm being really naughty. I was getting slightly distracted because I was trying to look for this. That wasn't quite what I was looking for, but what came up here was it's actually from 1 Corinthians. There's one from 1 Corinthians 16:13 and one from Deuteronomy 31:6. So it says, be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, and then it actually says be men of courage. Well, we are women of courage. So I'm rephrasing, be women of courage and men, and be strong. And then the Deuteronomy quote says, be strong and of good courage. Do not fear nor be afraid. And then goes on, obviously, in terms of the Bible as well, to talk about the Lord involved. But I was just sort of thinking about whatever your faith is, actually. That's the thing, isn't it? That the word faith, I think faith means very different things to different people. And whatever that means, you know, spiritual, biblical, you know, religious, otherwise, I think, actually, now we're sharing with that, you know, I think courage does, amongst other things, I think at some point it does take a leap of faith. I really do think that. And there are moments where you could come up with all the formulas in the world for courage itself and for how you can go about, I can give people lots of tips on, and working through how to be more courageous. But there's a point where ultimately you've still got to take that step by yourself, no matter what. And I think there is within that, I think at times there is an element of faith, trusting that, and there's trust as well, trusting that something good, no matter what, will come out of that. That's what strikes me.
And that's really interesting in really important actually in a coaching context, isn't it? That trust, that when you're having those conversations, that you will be able to trust in yourself, I guess, as a coach, to be in that conversation and just be able to, I don't know what the word is, like, just to be with wherever it's going to go, really, and know that you've got the skills and the capabilities to deal with that, I guess.
Yeah, it's almost like taking yourself out of your head is what struck me there, not there's a point where it's like you can do all the thinking in the world, but then you've got to, it's almost like I meant to say cut your head off. I mean that from the point of view of, the brain, the thinking, the thoughts. Ultimately there's a point where you've got to then just do it, it comes back to that thing. My head went back to the feel, the fear, and do it anyway. It's, you got to let go of the chitter chatter and the what ifs and the but you can't do this, and what will be the consequence of that, and what if they don't like it, and who are you to do that anyway? There's all that, those the chitter chatter. Some people might call them saboteurs, other people call them gremlins, the negative talk. Some people call them some of the conditioned voices potentially that we've all perhaps had growing up. So there's a lot I think that there. So
and I guess as a supervisor you must have some insights into the kind of conversations that some coaches might find a little bit more challenging, and that they might question their own sort of courage or sort of ability to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I've had some very honest conversations over the time with a few coaches who, especially if it's their own what I call their own business, as opposed to them working for an organisation or a company, and so they're very much their clients is their work. They're very reliant upon that work, and I think there are times where they know deep down maybe there's what we call an elephant in the room that they feel really needs to be spoken to enable the work to move forward. But they may be a little afraid that if they voice it, will they upset their clients? Will they, sort of say, well, I don't like that. I'm not here for you to, I don't know, challenge me, or I'm waffling a bit with that. But it just, there have been a number of occasions where I think the fear of the losing the client actually, can be something that can require courage to push through that. Because the ultimate piece I've found as well is that if you're playing safe and potentially, you're not taking the coaching to a point where you may have that moment of, ooh, how does that feel when I've said that, and how will it, how does it sit with the client? Some people might question, well, is it then really coaching? you know, if you're not willing to go to the challenging places, yeah, that's what just sort of struck me there.
Yeah, that I was sort of taken back to some of my own experiences there, of particularly in the early days of coaching, perhaps a little bit cautiously, I guess, of wanting to just you know, when you first train as a coach, like, you have all this new learning, don't you, and it's all there going whirling around in your head while you're coaching a client. And yeah, like, maybe could kind of being a bit more cautious about, oh, should I go there, and if I do go there, what's going to happen, and all that sort of stuff. And I guess that takes away really from that, like we said at the beginning, like, just like being very present in the conversation and just trusting yourself and your, you know, your instincts almost.
Yeah, no, definitely. So you've got me thinking. I'm in my head a little bit now, because I suppose I'm almost on. There's another piece, which is, I think I'm almost at the back here somewhere in the periphery. I'm now doing a bit of a run through, which isn't quite working, because I'm you know, this whole point of, oh, you know, like women can multitask loads. Well, I can multitask, but actually, in reality, you know what I mean? In reality,
I can't.
I need to focus on one thing to be really present. So I think what's happening for me at the moment is I'm thinking about your question, and I'm sort of almost here a bit sifting through. Oh, you know, what other experiences, what other interactions of I had with, you know, particularly other coaches I've supervised, that may need and require further courage.
I guess what I'm trying to draw out is, I mean, in terms of this event that we're going to be doing, you know, I guess what kind of situations might coaches maybe find themselves in right now, thinking, actually, I could really kind of benefit from this. This would be, you know, really helpful. Maybe just thinking about what some of the challenges might be for them right now in.
Well, that's that's a really big. The reason why I'm like going, well, that's a really big question. Is right now, as you and I are aware, in terms of when this has been recorded, we are literally, I mean, this is what now we're on. So it's Wednesday, 15th, 16th, 17th?
Yeah, 18th.
18th, yeah, at the moment then, yeah. So Wednesday, 18th of March, and the whole coronavirus thing is really, really beginning to emerge. And yeah, it's beginning to, I think, really start to affect how people will live, will work. This is the first, shall I say, week where I think there are a lot of changes, quite significant changes beginning to happen. And so, you know, we know the number of, you know, particularly over 70s, they're already advising to, you know, sort of, at least socially, keep themselves safer. There's a lot of talk at the moment about whether the schools are going. I think the schools are probably going to be announced really soon. They're about to close. So we're in massive times that actually, I think certainly most people's lifetime right now are unprecedented. I think, you know, in the world, not just, you know, UK, England, but the world. But so this piece about challenges for coaches, I think, I know it's only early days at the moment, but a number of people I've spoken to it's a bit of a mixed bag, actually, if I'm really honest. So on the one hand, there are some coaches, and also some of my, so, you know, because I also, you know, work with other practitioners, other therapists. So there are a number of people who I'm seeing within this week, and actually, it's really lovely and really energising and refreshing. And they're saying, I can really see the potential opportunities here, you know, the type of work we may consider doing, the communities we can create, the you know, that what place in the world coaching has to really be able to support people, you know, right now in these changing times. But I also have, interestingly, a number of people who are then saying, oh, but the challenge is, well, people are going to start to go, well, that's not a luxury. We're going to cut that. We're not going to pay for that. So actually there is, the link there about, so money will become, for some people, a bit tighter, or they'll certainly be questioning how they're spending, their money, their income. So there's a challenge there. And I think also, if people are used to working in one particular way, then for some people there may be more of a challenge about, well, how do I shift some of my work to create perhaps more online presence, and so that will be a challenge for some coaches and practitioners, and I think also within the changing climate, I think some coaches, therapists, we're all human beings. And the reason why I say that is because so people still have their own chitter chatter, their own gremlins, their own saboteurs, that actually, in the current climate more than any other time, will need to really become present and grounded, and really be able to dig deep within and what I call self-manage, and do lots of things for themselves, but also I think at the same time be connecting with others to really be able to keep themselves well and focused and in a good enough place so that they can enable and support and help other people who may be having big challenges, big questions, big shifts. So I think right now, and I think those will emerge over the coming weeks. I think there are many opportunities. I really do believe that. But I also, and within that, there are going to be challenges.
Yeah, it's challenges is interesting. I feel from my own perspective like it's a different set of challenges that almost feel a little bit unknown to me. So I've had a lot of people reaching out to me, because for example, they may have had the experience of losing a loved one, and now find themselves in a situation where perhaps they're like the only parent, as an example, and they're struggling to know how to cope with the situation, but are trying to keep a perspective on it. And or there might be people that this is bringing up a lot of grief because of the loss of finances, or the loss of health, or all these different losses, not just around bereavement.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So it's so to a large extent, there are things that I do have experiencing coaching people with and working with, but then there's also a part of me that still does feel a little bit like lacking in a bit of courage there, because it is such an unknown kind of situation, and not knowing how it's going to unfold over the coming weeks. And it's almost like, well, how much do I go there with clients? How can I actually help them through this? And so it's a tricky one, I think.
And I think what struck me there as well is I think it's being mindful and respectful and sensitive to where people are at, because it's different people have different perceptions of coaches and therapists, and anybody in the sort of helping profession, and so I think there is, as coaches, we know there's so much we can do to help and empower and support and actually going through, as you said, the range of losses within that there are opportunities to reframe, to re-look at people's ways of working, their way of living, their relationships that they have, and how how those look, and that maybe creating some new ways of looking at how they move forward. And at the same time, I think there's going to be and it already is, but I think even more so, a lot of potential for soul searching and questioning who am I? What am I about? How do I want to be? You know, in the world, with my community, at my work, with my family. Is this, is the work that some people are doing, as they're given time to work remotely, it may give them time to question, actually, do you know what? Based on what I've just been experiencing, do I want to continue working in the way I have been? Because I think, we're both aware that there's, a lot of the world, and life itself has had the potential to become very, very busy, very noisy. And I think at times it can be difficult for people to really quieten their mind and be able to have some time to think. But I think there's going to be time for that, and I think the reevaluating, especially reevaluating values. I think, we both know, a big part of coaching in particular is about working with people's values and what that means and what that looks like, and how people, can either be in alignment with what's important, true to them, or they're not necessarily in alignment, and the challenges that creates. So I think there's lots of potential, but I think there's a way, when I came back to sensitivity and being mindful, there's a way of doing it that is respectful. And I'm not saying I have the complete have the formula for that. But I do know some of that's it's about timing. It's about choosing choosing the time, the context, being aware, staying open, being conscious of looking, for the conversations, the opportunities that are right for somebody to perhaps be able to explore. And interestingly, what struck me there was looking at different ways of working as well. So if somebody, for example, turns around in the next so many months and he's, and genuinely saying, actually, what you have to offer, it really is something that I can, I'd really love to be able to be on the receiving end of, but actually I don't have the money, for example, I'm concerned, about other things, and the unknown, is to perhaps reconsider, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? I mean, what do I have to offer? Because I know on one level, that there is the element of people say, oh, well, I can't afford that. There's often a question of, well, actually, or the response, so to speak, is, well, so, but what is the worth and the value to you, the potential benefits it can bring to your life. But there is a difference between, I think, somebody knowing there's benefits and that they can offer, worth and value, and knowing there's benefits and worth and value, and genuinely somebody not being in a position, to be able to really, afford coaching. That's that is a reality, as well. So, yeah, I think it's,
and that I think is from my experience of myself and my peers, quite a common conversation that some coaches do struggle to have, in terms of having the courage to just really explore that with people and have that 100% authentic kind of approach in terms of what the arrangement is and stuff like that. I think people do struggle with that.
Yeah, and when you're coming back to talking about courage, for some, not all, but for some coaches, I think the talking about money, I think money in itself for some people is challenging. I think it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. Then there's the notion of putting the worth on the coach themselves. Also, what is my worth? What is my value? How do I come up with that? Then there's a piece around, well, but I can say I'm worth that much, but hold on a minute, will that translate? to people. Will they pay for that? Will they think it's too much? You know, or interestingly, and this can happen as well. Is it too little? And that's about that sort of pitching as well. I think that there's with the money aspects of it with coaches. I think it comes to courage. I think you want to, whatever that looks like. I think if there's if you're coming up with a fee that when you go to say it, the thought of it coming off your lips makes you internally go, ooh, and bit of I need to breathe a bit here, then that's probably a good place to sort of go. Because I had this, I'll share something with you. I had this recently. I had taken on a sort of like a coach, and in fact, I would say recently, now I'm thinking about it. This also happened actually in my sort of early stages when I was trying to consider how to create, the income stream and what was my value, my worth, and so on. And I went in mind with a certain fee. And actually, do you know what? This is really interesting. Something within me, and I always gone about trusting your instinct and your gut feeling, and it's very rare I ignore it. And on this occasion, I couldn't even tell you why right now, but I went only just slightly lower than what I had originally sort of felt in my gut. And it wasn't by much, but it was still a little bit. And actually, and you think, as in, listen to yourself, man. And when I said this fee, the person was like, okay, yeah. And really, there wasn't a response of, oh, I didn't feel that sort of response of, oh, okay, but yeah. And so I remember internally thinking, yeah, I was spot on first time in myself. Actually, if I'd have just gone that little bit more to what I was sort of, my gut feeling was telling me, that would have been okay.
Yeah.
And I couldn't right now in this moment sharing that with you. I actually don't recall. I couldn't tell you, I couldn't tell you why. I'd need to really sort of think that through. I'm
just giggling because I've got a vision of myself recently updating my pricing structure, and I hit that delete button so many times and like typed in a different number and then went back to and went a different number and it's like you get caught up in this thing in your head, like you say, this thinking, and really like in your gut what it is, what the number or what the figure is or whatever, but for some reason all of this just gets in the way of, and I guess that is quite an important point actually, because that all of this can get in the way of just again, it comes back to, like you said, trusting your instincts in the moment, and that's where the courage is. It's not up here, it's just here, isn't it? So
I've actually had I've had a number over the years, and a number of people who everyone does things in different ways. I got to a point where I made a decision that I don't really offer free coaching, per se. Certainly over a long period of time. I look at ways, if I really want to coach someone and there are some genuine challenges there, then we'll have those conversations and I'll look at different ways of working with that. But what I'm saying is, a general rule, I don't really offer what I call free sample coaching sessions that are of a significant amount of time. And what I found was that I basically have like an initial consultation, and people will pay for that. Whether they choose to then continue or not is a different matter, so they'll come to that irrespective. Doesn't mean they're an ongoing coaching client. And a few times I've actually had a number of people who, at the end of it, have turned around and said things like, do you know what? Actually, I'm right now. I recognise that I'm not going to have coaching right now. For example, I've had people say, because I suddenly realise actually there is work involved, and this is, you know, really made it real, and maybe made me aware and realise that am I committed enough to really put the time and the work and the effort into it. I've had other people who've actually, from that experience, recognised they actually really do and would benefit from the coaching, and have actually turned around and said that they would have the coaching and they would pay my fee, even though I think if I hadn't have offered the consultation and I'd have said what my fees, I think some of those people would have just, you know, I mean, heard the fee and gone, oh no, sorry, I can't afford that. So what they did was they came for the consultation, they had the experience, really, you know, sort of experience the power for them of what it can help them with and what it can bring for them and the benefit, and sort of went, you know, in their own minds and conversation, went, do you know what, actually, this will really massively make a difference to my life, and if I want this difference, then I'm prepared to, you know, sort of do what I need to do to make that happen. Yeah.
I wonder if we underestimate, actually, or maybe not underestimate, but don't always think about how much courage it takes the other person as well in this coaching relationship. You know, having the courage, I mean, there's a fair bit of courage there, isn't there, to say, actually, this isn't for me as well.
Yeah.
As much as it is to say, oh, actually, no, I do need this.
Yeah.
And I suppose I've been thinking of this a little bit one-sided in a way, really. It's like I'm needing all this courage, but actually it's taking an enormous amount of courage for that person in the relationship to be where they're at as well. And yeah,
no, it absolutely may have. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that what we're talking about there is, you know, the element of courage working both ways with coach and coachee, client, you know, whatever terminology people use. But I think courage is needed on both accounts. I think what that may look like can maybe be slightly different. Because I think it's important. I was just thinking that, actually, I think it's important for the coach to enable their client, their coachee, to really to give them permission. And it's something about, you know, I mean, you give them permission for all sorts of things, but I think there's something, you know, for me, it's like giving people permission to be courageous. So, for example, you know, with my coaching contracts, you know, and clients, I'll be like, you know, in the early stages, I'll be very clear in saying to them, I give you full permission to challenge me. You know, I give you permission to question. Yeah, do you know what I mean? I you know, I give you permission to be to be as honest as you feel you can be, because this is in service of enabling that person to grow and to develop and to you know, gain in all the ways that they you know, will be sharing that they want from the coaching relationship and the coaching experience. So I think there's something, I mean, it's interesting. I'm very mindful. I think there's so many different strands here that we're connecting to and sharing, and which is wonderful, by the way. It's almost like now we're on this piece here, I think to myself, gosh, there's so many different, you know, it's almost like, well, there's at least 3 or 4 pieces that have come out of, in my mind, have come out of that conversation. I'm thinking, well, each of those could have a call in themselves. to
Yeah,
explore.
definitely.
That's what struck me. I was just
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface here of
oh, totally, yeah,
giving people a bit of a flavour of some of the things that are. And again, like this is just completely off the cuff, really, isn't it? So
yeah,
I'm gonna I think it'd be really good to wrap this up actually, but I
yeah.
really want to just talk before we go about this event in June as well, just to give people, you know, a sort of a flavour or an idea of some of the things that we might be covering for them that might be able to really help them.
Mm.
So do you want to, I mean, obviously I can talk a little bit about mine, but do you want to sort of give like the overview as you're the creator
Listen to you.
of this?
Sounds very big, doesn't it? The creator.
Innovator.
Yeah. I mean, the overview is creating a space, a professional space for other coaches to really come and explore and develop and share, you know, what courage looks like, what it means, you know, in context of you know, their work and their practice, and you know, the sort of clients that they work with. Of course, that may be transferable, I'm quite clear, to other areas of, you know, people's lives, but you know, predominantly that's the main sort of piece and focus. I think there's also within that there are some, you know, exploration of spaces around, well, you know, again, what like we've been exploring here, you know, what is that? What does that mean? You know, does that have a place with coaching? You know, does it sit right with coaching? Can you have there's all sorts of questions it brings up as well. You know, can you actually have coaching without courage? Is that then coaching? What does that look like? So I think that it will, I think there'll be, hopefully it will give a space to explore lots of questions, lots of discussions, also to connect, because I think that's always a big piece as well, really, for other coaches, like-minded coaches, to connect with each other, which I think, you know, is important. And coming back to what you were saying actually about when you were starting to ask me a bit about the challenges for coaches, I think that's something that, you know, within the courageous coaching conversations, certainly we can explore further at that event, because I know, you know, my sort of piece within the workshop is really exploring the whole connection with, you know, what does it mean? How does it link to coaching? Does it have the place? I'd done some research in action, sending out a number of questions actually to different coaches and getting their responses to some of those questions, which I will also be looking to share at the event with the workshop as well. You know, I'm really, I suppose I'm trying to stay quite open to the possibility as well of what that will bring and what that will mean. I've been doing quite a lot of reading around Brené Brown's work around bravery and courage, and how that connects to many other pieces. So I think that's yeah, that's sort of informed, I think, currently at the moment, some of my sort of thinking as well. Spoke to another researcher who had done some, a couple of years ago now, he'd done some research through Oxford Brookes. He'd done some work around bravery and coaching, particularly within leadership. So he's given me some interesting thoughts to consider. So there's an element here where, I mean, it's March. The event at the moment is you know, meant for June. That's the 11th of June. That's the date at the moment. I think for me, I'm really still working with, shall I say, the process of what this can really mean. So, you know, I'm constantly so much at the forefront of my mind, all the stuff I'm reading, all the feedback I'm getting from coaches, the the courageous coaching conversations around the coffee table with some other people I'm doing the work with. It's all on some level helping me. Do you know what I mean, to inform what I will, what space I'll be bringing to create on that day itself. I don't really feel in the same way that we're speaking. I can speak for, sort of Neil Wood, who's obviously doing one of the other workshops. Maybe something for us to talk about in terms of, maybe him sort of having another conversation about what he's going to do. But I know he's linking his piece around some of his coaching training, which is around the 3 Ps, and how that may link, particularly working with sort of suicide and sort of trauma, because he's also previously an ex sort of policeman as well. He's done a lot of work, and he's currently with his coaching around sort of stress disorders and sleep disorders. And he does a lot of work at the moment, really developing his work around connecting coaching with walking, been out and about in nature and so on, and the impact that can have. So I know, he'll be sort of bringing those elements, if you like, to the table with his particular workshop as well, particularly speaking. So yeah. And yourself, obviously.
Yes, I want to. So obviously, I'm bringing the sort of the grief and loss / bereavement theme to the conversation. So there will be, like I said earlier, there's very few coaches that sort of specialise in this area, or there will be coaches out there that are working with people in different areas, but then still may have clients that come through that this is a very current thing that's happening for them right now in their life, and so they're really sort of dealing with the challenges that are presented to them in the moment, as we've said. So for me, exploring the sort of the courage around the conversations that we have for people that are dealing with bereavement and grief and loss. And there are many coaches out there that, for some coaches, just not even sure how to go there or open up, the conversation. And then also the other thing that I'm quite interested in is there's an awful lot of models out there around grief, which are all really super helpful. But I think for us to be able to sort of hold space for those models and just have them in our awareness, but not have them kind of restrict or define the way in which we're working with people in the context of grief. And that's again something I'm really keen to explore and share a couple of those tools and models and things, but really explore how we can work, not feeling like feeling we can break free from those kind of models and theories as well. So
no, totally with you. And I was just thinking then, as you were sharing, that there's also, I mean, there are some people who may even question the notion of coaching and linking it to coaching with grief and loss. Some
every day.
Yeah, and especially me, also having in my sort of my therapy background as well. I know there are some people who would be saying, that's for therapy land. That's do you know what I mean? That's got nothing to do with coaching. So I don't agree with that, but I understand those other question marks. So for me as well in particular, I think it'd be a great sort of conversation actually to be having around how that is helpful with coaching and what that sort of looks like. So yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Mandy. This is just the beginning of
I totally absolutely
courageous conversations. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us, and we'll just ask people to watch this space.
Definitely. Thank you for the opportunity, Louise.